Hello and welcome. Let's see. Got 8 viewers so far. That is good. One person in chat. Debo MC. Loves the music. Thank you. This is NCS releases. It's a copyright free playlist, so hopefully no issues when I upload it to YouTube, which as you know I always try to do. So yeah. Coding with Static Flow, welcome. What extension are we gonna build? You know what, I figured we're not gonna focus on necessarily building like a good extension. What we're just gonna do is we're gonna mess around, and because there's the key thing to extensions is generally what you do is you have an idea beforehand, right? And then you plan it out and you code it. But to do that, you still need to know exactly how to like the basics of coding extensions. So what we're going to cover is we're going to explain what Burp extensions are, and then we're just going to dive into one. And we'll just make it up as we go along. We'll see what we can do, because realistically, we could do anything. But I think the main things I want to cover are how to sort of edit requests on the fly, maybe even edit responses if we want to, because I tend to find when I'm making extensions, at least when I'm making them for pen tests, being able to edit requests or responses is one of the main things I do. So for example, extension I created recently for work, the web application used like a really custom authentication mechanism, which basically had to sign, it almost like signed every request. And obviously Burp can't do that because it doesn't understand, exactly how the signature works. So it could proxy everything fine, because obviously the application is signing everything. But if you tried to modify part of the request, the signature wouldn't match up. And obviously when you're scanning, when you're using Intruder, Burp is doing a lot of modifications. So what I ended up having to do was I understood how to generate the signature for the request. So I just coded a simple extension which regenerated the signature before Burp sent it out. And so that's probably what we'll end up doing. We'll just mess around. I think if if people want to, we can start doing some GUI stuff as well. But I think it's important to learn the basics first, so that's what we're going to do. Ragnarok's here. Welcome, Ragnarok. Please tell me we'll write extension in Python. We are not going to write our extension in Python. We may, if we're feeling good at the end, try and write one in Jython. Because effectively, I mean, so extensions, if you don't know, you can write them in 3 languages. You can write them in Java, which is what Burp is written in. And Java is the easiest to write in terms of Burp extensions, mostly because it's native, right? Native to Burp. You can write them in Python. Technically, it's not Python, it's Jython, because effectively Jython is a Java interpreter for Python. All right, so you are writing Python code, but you're interacting with objects the same way you would in Java. So it's kind of like it's almost like an interface written in Python to the Java API. And you can also write them in Ruby, which is technically JRuby, exactly the same thing. So we're going to write in Java. I apologize. Only because that is native. It's much easier because you can import the jar with all the API extensions, and you can use autocomplete and everything. You might be able to do that in Python. I'm not entirely sure. All I know is when I do write things write extensions in Python, which I do a lot. If I'm writing a quick extension, I'll write it in Python. If I am doing that, I will often have Eclipse open, just so I can see what the API does and do autocomplete. But we can have a go at that. I'm not even sure if I have Jython. Actually, I must have Jython set up. I do. Okay, I have Jython set up, so we can definitely do that. All right. So let's dive into it. What are Burp extensions? Well, Burp is pretty basic when it comes to functionality by default. So it has all the sort of the useful stuff. It has intruder, it has repeater, all these lovely things. And you can, with like vanilla Burp, do a hell of a lot of stuff. But there are extensions that make our lives easier. They add things. So as you can see, I love my extensions. Right, all of these that don't have a check mark aren't loaded right now. If they were loaded, and this is like on my regular work laptop, I'll have these all loaded. They effectively create so many tabs that there's like 3 rows of tabs, which isn't for everyone, but that's just how I work. So we got stuff like .NET Beautifier. By default, Burp doesn't display .NET parameters very nicely. .NET Beautifier sorts that out. Active Scan++ adds a load of scanner functionality. Add custom header is useful for adding custom headers, as you might imagine. You can do these based on other extensions, I think. Let me check. Where's add custom header? All right, yeah, you can base it on the session handling rules, so you can add extensions based on the session, which is kind of cool. I won't go down these all, but these are all really cool extensions. This is like my default list. So I have got a few enabled here, like Hackverter, Taberator, and Logger++. They're just 3 I usually load for these demos anyway. So I just haven't unloaded them. But you can do quite a lot with extensions. So let's go into it. Let's hang on. Minimize that. Right. So if you go to Portswigger, you can go through the support center documentation all the way to this extender. This gives a load of information about extender, but the main thing you want to look at, so there's 2 things really. This, which I'll paste the URL in the chat. So this is the Java doc for all of the effectively the API we can use for the extender, right? So this is all the classes that we can use in our extension. Some of them are required, some of them are optional, but as you can see, there's a load of content. So if we, for instance, look down and let's go to HTTP request response, you can see there's a number of different methods that we can use. And this kind of explains them a little bit. So this is a really useful sort of document to have on hand. The other thing, if I go back, if you go to portswigger.net/burp/extender and then scroll down, you'll find a link to that Java doc actually, which I didn't realize was there. That's cool. But also you'll find some sample extensions, and this is the best way to get started. Apologies, I'm just drinking my coffee. So yeah, there's a few great extensions here that we can get started with. So what we'll do is we'll probably just open this one, but we're going to code it from scratch. But if you want to play around with these, you can just copy and paste this code. Let me zoom in so everyone can see it all right. But yeah, what we're going to do, we're going to start from scratch. So I have Eclipse open. So I have spent about an hour, and I'm not kidding, configuring Eclipse so that all the fonts are larger. But some fonts I could not. I could not find an option for it. So none of the fonts in these menus I could get to change. Some of the dialogue fonts I couldn't get to change. I apologize. I'll explain what's going on. You'll see when I do tab complete, the suggester for what I can do, what code I can use, that won't be large. And I can only apologize. I did Google it. I don't think you can change it. So that's fun. But we're going to start off. We're going to right click in the package explorer and we're going to go new. And obviously this is going to be a Java project, right? What should we call this? Let's just call it Tiberius Burp extension. Okay. Everything is really going to be default here. So I've got the Java 14 JRE installed, so we're going to use that. We don't need to change anything here. If we click next, this is where we need to change stuff. So currently we can define the Java build settings. So we have the source, which is fine. But what we want to do is go across to the libraries tab, and you want to click class path, and then click add external jar. And then what you want to do is you want to navigate to wherever you have your Burp Suite jar file, right? And if you've installed Burp in Windows like I have using the installer, you just need to go and fetch the jar file, which you can download. I think you can even download it from Burp if you go to help, download other installers, right? So we want to select this jar file and click open, and that's going to add the Burp Suite jar to the class path, and that's necessary so that we can use these functions, right? So we can use the API, and then I think that's it. I think, yeah, we just need to click finish. It says, do you want to create a new module info.java file? We do not. And so now we have this basic setup here. You want to go into the source, the src directory, and we're going to add a new package called burp, all lowercase. Again, we don't need to create a package info. Okay. And then the only other thing we need to make is this burpextender.java. You always need to have a burpextender.java file. All right. And so we're going to go back to Eclipse. Right-click again, click new. Sorry, right-clicking on the burp package. Click new, go to class. Apologize, again, they're all very small, but that's basically what I was doing. We're going to create burp extender. Don't put the .java in there. So the name is burp extender. Everything else should be default. So if we click finish, then we get this burp extender.java file. All right. And all it has is the package, and it has public class burp extender. Fiskin AI, thank you for the follow. Okay, so we're going to go back to here. So the only other rule really is that we need to implement burp extender. All right, that is the only other thing we need to do. So what we'll do, so go back to this. We'll implement burp extender, and we're going to have to import that. So we can. Oh, it's iBurp extender. I apologize. Right, that's why. So if we do that, then we get this. So it's implements iBurp extender. Right? All the classes have an I in front of them. Right, so they all start with I. I should have remembered that. And then we'll get this sort of yellow light bulb with a red X. And if we click that, it's going to say, okay, well, you know, there's something wrong here. And in this case, it's just because we're implementing this, we need to we need to have a bunch of methods from this implemented class. So you can't, if you can't see this, and please tell me if you can see what it says. it says add unimplemented methods as the first suggestion, right? There's a few other ones, but this one solves the problem. Add unimplemented methods. And if I click that, double click it, what it's going to do is it's going to add this method, register extender callbacks. Okay, and this is basically the only method that we need to implement for the iBurp extender class. Okay, all right. The other thing that is useful to have are two variables, callbacks and helpers. If you have these, it makes things so much easier to use. So what I'm going to do, we'll go to the top of the class. I'm just going to paste that code. So I've made a private variable. The type is iBurp extender callbacks, and it's called callbacks. And then I've made another private variable, iExtension helpers, and it's called helpers. All right. So technically these are instance variables, but if you don't understand Java object orientation, that's absolutely fine. These are just variables. Okay. All right. So the next thing that we want to do, if we go back and look at this code, you'll see this is the register extender callbacks method that this example extension has implemented. What it does is it sets the instance object to this the instance here of callbacks. It creates a new helpers object, and then it sets the extension name. So that's what we'll do. So as you can see, there's this callbacks variable here, which is different from this one. So what we want to do is we want to set the value of this variable to this, right? Or a reference, really. So what I'll do is we'll do this callbacks equals callbacks. Okay. And so now we want to use the callbacks functionality of this iBurp extender callbacks class. We can just reference this.callbacks, and we can do this from anywhere in this class, right? So otherwise you wouldn't be able to do that. You'd only be able to access callbacks from this method right here. So when we do this, it means that even if we're down here in some random method, right down here, we can just call this.callbacks, and that's because we're using this instance variable up here. And the same thing with helpers. So we're going to set this.helpers equal to callbacks dot. And this is why I like coding these extensions in Eclipse, or at least some IDE, is because it understands that this.helpers is an iExtension helpers object, or it's expecting an iExtension helpers object. So when I type callbacks and I put the dot there, it's going to give me a list of suggestions, right? And the first one is going to be, it's the getHelpers method, which returns an iExtension helpers object. So that's the one I want. Okay. So we've done that. So now we have the helpers object, and the helpers object is really helpful, ironically. You can do a bunch of stuff with it, especially. Let's just have a look at what it has, right? So it has these analyze request methods, it has analyze response methods, it has base64 decoding and encoding. You can build HTTP messages with it. What else can you do? You can get request parameters. You can make scanner insertion points. There's all this stuff. URL decoding as well. So it's basically it's a really helpful class. That allows us to just do a bunch of functionality. Rolfan, thank you for the follow. Okay, so the only other thing we really need to do right now is register our extension. Actually, sorry, we need to set the extension name, set extension name, right? So we're going to set the extension name to Tiberius's burp extension. Okay, and we'll save that. And I think you have to excuse me, I haven't coded a burp extension in a while, so I think what we do need to do is add Oh, maybe not. So let me just check over here. I think that's it actually. So that's the basics for an extension. Let's try it. Okay. So I've saved the burpextender.java. This warning is just saying that helpers isn't being used yet. We probably will use it at some point. But that won't stop us from compiling. So what we're going to do, we're going to right-click on this project. Nerdwood Smith, thanks for the follow. So we're going to right-click on this project. Again, I apologize. I tried so hard to change the font size here. If you cannot see this, I'm going to tell you exactly what's happening. So if you right-click on the project name, there's an export option here. So we're going to click export. And the jar file one is the one we want, but like let's just assume that we didn't have that set. If you just type jar, okay, you'll get two options, jar file or runnable jar file. We just want a jar file. Okay. And we're going to click next. Select the resources to export. We only want this Tiberius burp extension. Everything really should be default. You just need to set the jar file location. So in this case, I've set it to the same directory that burp is in, but you shouldn't need to do that. I'm just going to call it tiberius.jar. Okay, I think everything else should be default. I have set overwrite existing files without warning, and that's only because I'm going to be recompiling this, and I don't want to have to say, yes, you can save over what I have. So click next. Again, everything is default. So you click through and you can click finish. Java export finish with warnings. See the details. Yeah, compile warnings were what we expected because helpers isn't being used, but that's okay. Warnings are fine, errors are bad. All right, so we have our burp extension compiled. So if we go back to burp, we're on extender tab, we're in the extension sub tab, we click add. Make sure that extension type Java is selected, and then we're going to go in here, and here's our extension, right? Tiberius.jar. If we open it and we click next, extension loaded successfully. Any output or error message generated are shown below. Well, there's no output and no errors, which is great. And as you can see, right, it's loaded at the bottom of the list, and there's the extension name we set, Tiberius's burp extension. Okay. And so that's loaded, right? That's loaded in burp. It's not doing anything apart from displaying its own name, but we've just coded the burp extension. All right. So the other thing that we can do, which is helpful, is potentially output stuff down here, right? If we want to output debugging things, then we can do that. I'm used to coding these in environments that are used for like Linux and Mac. So generally, if you're on Linux and Mac, you can just do system.out. So you can write system.out.println whatever, and then that will get printed down here. I don't think that works, but actually we should give it a shot. So again, I'm going to select everything, and once you compile the first time, you can pretty much just click finish. It's going to remember where the jar is. Since we have overwrite existing files without warning checked, everything should be fine. If you want to reload, so you can either remove it, or you can click the check mark to unload it and then click it again to load it. Or if you want to be really fancy, you can hold down Control and click it once, and that will unload it and then immediately reload it. And as you can see, we did that and it did not put anything down there. So I think what we have to do is use this code. So if we have this is a print writer object, we're calling it stdout, standard out. we're creating a new print writer, and we're using callbacks.getStdout, right? So this is why callbacks is useful. We can get the standard output. And what does true do? You know what, if we just create a new print writer down here, we can see what options we get. All right, auto flush. So I'm basically saying, so actually I don't even need this flush line. So if this is set to true, it auto flushes, which means whenever you print something, it's going to flush that to the standard output. All right, and that's actually going to display. So if we save this, right-click again, export, jar file, next, finish, forget about the warnings, go down to Burp, and again, hold down Control, and click it, then we get hello. Okay, so this is really useful for debugging. So what we could do is we could create private private print writer debug, right? And then what we can do is we can change this to just debug, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, I'm going to click refactor, rename, and we're going to say this is going to be this dot debug. Okay. Why has that worked? Oh, I don't need the print writer. That's why. All right, because debug was already defined as a print writer. It was like I was trying to define it twice. So now we can use this .debug anywhere in the code. All right, as long as we're within this class. Okay. So let's just comment out that line. We don't want it printing hello every time. But yeah, okay. So the next question, I guess, is what do we actually want to code? Well, in this case, this extension is a custom logger. If we go back to this extension adds a new tab to Burp's user interface and displays a log of HTTP traffic for all Burp tools. Okay. So really what it's doing is it's intercepting traffic and it's displaying it. So it's using this iHTTP listener. So what we'll do is we'll implement this iHTTP listener and see what that does. So again, we go back to up here. And I don't think I can... Did I type it wrong? Oh, I need a comma, right. Okay, cool. So I put a comma, iHTTP listeners. Now we're implementing two things. Again, it's going to show this light bulb. And who just followed? Sam0tsec. Thank you for following. If we click that, it's going to say, okay, the type Burp extender, hang on. It's not giving me an option to fix. Quick fix? No. I'm not sure. Let's just delete that and try again. Hang on. Okay, iHTTP listener. There should be like a box that pops up and tells me what it needs, like it did before, which is interesting that it's not. Usually that happens. Okay. So I guess you can just right click and do quick fix, or you can if it worked. It's down here. I did it, so I right-clicked on this quick fix, and then it said, okay, add unimplemented methods, which is what it should do. Right. Okay. It's like the demo bug, right? Nothing ever works. So yeah, usually when you click that, it pops up and says it. This time we just had to go down to this problems tab at the bottom. But yeah, I don't know why that didn't work. That's weird. Okay. These errors, I think, are from this project, which I'm just gonna close. Yeah, okay. So we're gonna ignore that now. So what happened when we implemented the iHTTP listener, we had to create a new method here, process HTTP method. And this method has 3 parameters. It has this tool flag, which is an integer. It has a boolean, so basically a true or false, called message is request. So obviously, when you're intercepting HTTP messages, they can be either request or response. And so if this boolean, if it intercepts, our extension intercepts a HTTP message, and it's a request, then this message's request will be true. If it's a response, then this will be false, okay? And then finally, it's going to give us this message info, which is an object iHTTP request response, okay? So what we can do is, I'm going to delete that. I guess the easiest thing we can see is we can check, right, if message is request, then we can use this.debug to print a line intercepted request. Okay. Else we'll use this.debug print line intercepted response. Okay. So there's no compiler errors there. So we can go to export again, select the jar, click finish, and then if we reload this, so remember we removed the code that said hello. And now though, if we go here, let's go to example.com. So this should be proxying through everything. Why did that not work? Is it actually proxying? Honestly, that's an interesting one. Let me just make sure that's... I'll put the hello back in and we'll see if that's working. Yeah, so that's working, but then if I reload this page, we get nothing. Why? That is bizarre. Oh, I know why. And this is why I haven't coded this in a while. So even when you implement a listener, it doesn't actually run any of this code. You have to actually register the listener. So this is me clearly not understanding. Right, so if we go this.callbacks register HTTP listener, and then we put this, and this basically is referring to this an object of this burp extender, right? So basically it's kind of referring to the extension itself. Okay. And actually we should have noticed this. If you click on the extension and you go to details, it will tell you what it is implemented. So if we go to logger, right, it says it's got an extension state listener, it's got an HTTP listener, a proxy listener, it's got a suite tab, and our one had absolutely nothing. All right. So once we've done that, if we recompile, so let me take out the hello message. If we recompile this and click finish. Okay, and then if we reload, okay, now you see we have an HTTP listener down here. All right, registered. So hopefully, if I reload this page, there we go. So it sent 1, 2, 3 requests and it intercepted 3 responses. And if we scroll down, that's actually because this was the first request just to example.com, and then it loaded the favicon or the favicon, however you want to pronounce it. And then also apparently Firefox did a domain reliability upload as well. So intercepted all 3 of those. Okay. And you're going to have to excuse me. The reason I didn't notice that earlier is, generally speaking, when I'm coding Burp extensions, I'll like just copy and paste a lot. Because as you can see, coding it from scratch is kind of annoying. So I'll like have a default register extender callbacks that I'll paste from other things. So that's why I forgot you need to register them. Okay, but now we have it doing something, right? So I guess what we can do, if we only want to, and going back to the start when I said what we were going to try, so we'll play around with stuff. So I tell you what we'll try is, we'll try extracting some headers from requests, and maybe adding a custom header. Okay, and I understand you can do this in Burp easily with the proxy. You can go to options, and you can do a match and replace to create a header. But that can only be done with the proxy, right? Much harder to do it if you want to add headers to like a thing that's being scanned. It's a bit difficult. So let's try that. So we'll delete this code because we don't really care about responses. So we want to only do it if a message is a request. We can take out this debug code now. So how do we get hold of requests, right? Well, actually, you know what? You know, it would be great if this only applied to things we sent with repeater. Okay, and how can we do that? Well, remember the tool flag. That's important. So if we do this.callbacks, oops, I believe there is right. This.callbacks has this list of integers, and if you can't see this, I apologize. But it has a list of integers: tool underscore comparer, tool underscore decoder, all of them for every single default tab in Burp, right? So it even has one for tool underscore repeater. All right, and that integer, right, will match this integer from tool flag if the request was sent from repeater. So inside our if messages request, we can also do if this.callbacks tool.repeater equals tool flag. Okay, and so everything inside here will only be actioned if the request came from the repeater. Okay, so now we can play about with this message info object. So let's just have a look and see what message info has. So it has these things: get host, which is a string. It has the get port, the get protocol, get URL. So I guess what we can do is we could actually, let's just get the host. And let's print it out. Oh, somehow that got rid of the message info. Okay, so again, we're just really playing around. We're going to take it slow. We're just going to print out the host from the intercepted request, right? Provided that we send it in repeater. So let's compile this. Java and that. Go to Burp again, go back to Extender. Hold down Control and click that. And now if we reload the page, we shouldn't get anything here, right? We don't. However, hopefully, if we send this to repeater and click send, yeah, we get example.com down here. Okay. So, and you'll notice we don't get anything for a response. All right, because we've taken out the code that deals with the responses. Okay. So, comment out that again. We don't really care about that. But the message info has a bunch of other things we can do. So we can get the request in bytes, right? We can also get the response in bytes. This is where the helper method, this.helpers, because if we do analyze request, all right, actually hang on. So the analyze request, it takes an HTTP service and it takes the bytes, a byte array of the request, and it returns an iRequestInfo object. So what we need to do is we need to create an iRequestInfo object, and we'll call it request, and then we'll set this to this.helpers analyze request, and the HTTP service, which is what it requires, is you can get it from messageinfo.getHTTP and then the bytes, messageinfo.getRequest, okay, and that will create, I'm just going to move this a bit. So that's going to create an object called request, and then what does request have in it? Well, in request you can get all this lovely information, so you can get the headers, you can get the method, get parameters, get the URL. You can even get, I think, the content types. So we want to get the headers, right? And the headers returns it returns a string list. So I believe we can do for string s in request.getHeaders. I think that debug.println s. Okay, so all we're doing, we're iterating over the headers, and we're going to print each one out. So we'll export that and reload, holding down Control. If I send this again, scroll up, right? So we got all the headers out. Okay. So let's say that we want to what do we want to do with these headers? I think we can create headers. We have to have a look at the documentation here. It's been a while since I've done this. There is a way. Sorry. So I'm just searching some other code that I've written. Okay, yeah, you can't do that. All right. I thought maybe, wouldn't you create headers for the response? Not necessarily. I mean, you can do both. We're just modifying headers for the request. So we iterated over that. but that was honestly just to show that we could. So we can delete that. Let's add a header. So we can do this easily. We can do request.getHeaders. And remember, getHeaders returns a list. So we can just add a string to this list. And so let's add a header, right? X custom header Tiberius. Okay. But that only adds it to the list, right? Now what we need to do is build a new request object. All right. So we need to create a new iRequest info. Let's call it new request. And what we'll do, this dot helpers build HTTP request, right? So we can build an HTTP request using hang on a minute. Using a string, so a list of headers and the bytes of the body. Okay, I actually don't think we need sorry, let me confusing myself here. Let me just do this. There is a way to set headers, and I think message info dot. All right, that's how you do it. Set request. Okay. Right. Okay, so we basically need to build a byte array, which is the new request that we're building. So I think build HTTP request. Right. Should return a byte array. Okay, that's where I got confused. I thought it was returning an iExtension helpers object, but it's not. So this will take a list of headers. So this should take the request.getHeaders. Oh. Get headers, and then this should take the byte array, I think, of the body. So basically the body of the request. And to get that is a slightly more complicated. I have some code that does it, I think. Right. So up here, what we want to get is we want to get the offset of the body. So request offset, actually body offset, I guess. Which is request dot get body offset. What get body offset does, it returns an integer. So if we go back to here, the body starts here, right? These are all headers, and then the body's down here. What the get offset will do, it will convert this to effectively a list of characters, and it will say, okay, so say there's, so how many characters are in this? Let's just say there's like 200 characters here, and the body starts at 201, right? So let's say there was a body there, and that started at 201. The offset would return 201, right? I hope that makes sense. So now if we get the string body, we can create a new string from the request dot get, actually not the request, sorry, the message info dot get request dot substring, and then the beginning index, which is going to be body offset. I hope that makes sense. So effectively what we're doing was, okay, we're getting the offset of the body, so basically where the body starts in the request. We're creating a new string called body, which gets all the bytes of the request, okay, and then creates a substring, and the substring is going to basically be starting at the body offset all the way to the end of the string. So what we effectively have here is a string called body, which just contains the bytes from the body. And then we should just be able to do body.getBytes. And obviously this builds an HTTP message, which is a byte array. So we'll say new request equals that. And then to set it, we have to go to message info dot set request new request. Okay, so what should happen is it's going to analyze the request if it comes from repeater. It's going to add a custom header. It's going to rebuild the request and then set that request before it gets sent. Okay, so all this happens before the request gets sent. So hopefully this is going to work. This is the trouble with coding stuff live. Let's finish that. The other thing we'll need to do, currently my extension is loaded last in the list, which means effectively all other extensions get to process things before mine does. What we want to do is we want to move it up at least so that logger displays everything, because what logger should do then is catch the extension. It should intercept the request after I've modified it. So let's just hope that works. I'm gonna control reload that. So let's send it. We got a bad, oh, hang on. Let's send it again. Let's go down to this one. Did it send? It did not. Why did that not work? Did we get any error messages? We didn't. I honestly wonder. Let's just. Honestly wonder if it didn't actually add it to the request headers. So debug dot println. Yes. I guess what we could do as well is do a debug.println and create a new string out of this new request. Hey Ang31D. Yeah, we're we're trying to write Burp extensions on the fly without any real practice and me having not coded one in months. So as you can imagine, it's going. Is this being fun? Right, let's try reloading it and see. Now we have some debugging. This is why debugging is great. Okay, so let's send this. Go to extender. All right. Okay, so it's not actually adding it. So I think my mistake was assuming that this add changed the value of get headers, which it didn't. That's okay though. So what we can do is we can just create a new list called new headers. Okay. And we will then add the custom header to new headers. I think that's, I have to import something. Let me find out what type it is. This string, I think it's java.util. Oops. I'm pretty sure it's java.util we need to use. All right, cool. So now what we can do, we can replace that with new headers to make sure, and also replace this. When we're building the HTTP message, we'll replace it with new headers. All right. So I think honestly this should work now. I think my main issue was assuming that the get headers function returned an object which was mutable, and it wasn't. That's on me. Okay, let's refresh that. Click send. Go down. Okay, here we go. So you can see, right? Scroll up. We've added the X-custom header Tiberius, and the request itself has that. So if we go to logger, there we go. It's there. Okay. Did everyone understand that? Are there any questions so far? Ang31D says, wouldn't you need to extend the class holding get headers and write your own method in that case? So yeah, I think I just honestly, I haven't coded in Java for so long, I forgot how objects worked. But yeah, effectively, yeah, get headers builds a list and returns that. It doesn't use that list as like an instance variable or anything, so that was on me. But again, this is why we debug stuff. This is in no way like an expert tutorial in in building extensions. This is trial and error. All right, let's comment out all this lovely debug information. Because we don't need that anymore. So I guess what we could do, let's say that instead of this X-custom header, right, what we needed to do was take the request URL and a known password, right? And somehow generate an authentication token using that. All right. So how do we get the URL? Let's see. Let's see what message info has. Message info has a get URL object, which we can get the path and we can get the query from. Okay, so that's probably useful information. So let's get the path from that, and let's get the query. Okay. And you know what? Let's print those out and see what that looks like. So we'll print out path and we'll concatenate it with just, you know what? Let's concatenate it with a question mark because that's how it's done. Because we want to debug, we want to see what happens. Does query return anything when there's no query? Does it return like a null or something? So let's do this. Again, we'll export finish, reload the extension by holding down Control. So currently there's no, there is a path which is just /, but there's no query. Okay, and so yeah, we do get a null. So that's important. We basically want to ensure that if there's no query, we don't have a query reflected back. So that's useful to know. There should always be a path, because the HTTP spec should not just allow you to do that, for instance. Yeah, in this case, it thinks that HTTP 1.1 is the path. So that's okay. I forgot to ask what functionality we're trying to create. We are not trying to create any kind of functionality. We are just coding a Burp extension as we go, just to show exactly what steps you need to do. So that's why there's a lot of debugging. I had the basic idea of just modifying a request, which I think is useful. So that's what we're going to do. We're probably going to at some point also create a new tab and maybe show how you can modify things like that. But for the moment, this is a simple extension that's just going to extract the path query information and do a few things to them. So what we want to do is after this, we want to check if query is equal to null. Then we need to set query equal to just empty string, really. Okay, and that's going to save that error getting placed there. Okay. Then so now what we'll do is we'll do the string, I guess, URL. Or not really the URL, it's kind of a URI. We'll set that to nothing, and then we'll build it here. So if the query is null, we just want the URI to be equal to the path. Otherwise, we want it to be equal to the path plus question mark plus the query. Okay. And so now, if we just output the URI, or the URI, or however you want to pronounce it, so let's send just that. We get that. If we have a query, I guess a no query, we get no query. That's perfect. And if we have test equals test, we get test equals test. Perfect. Okay, so let's say we want to create fury.getBytes. Let's add some of this content back. So we're going to import message digest, and we're going to import standard char sets. And this is probably going to, yep, need to surround with the try catch. And we need to initialize the variable. Okay, so let's see what encoded hash prints out. Finish. And go back to extender. Okay, we got that. So that's a byte object though, isn't it? So we actually probably need to create a new string from that. Let's see. Okay, and send. Lovely. I guess what we just base 64 encode it, you know. So what we're going to do, we're going to append our secret password. All right, secret password. Who just followed? Christy, thank you for the follow. And here again, we're going to append our secret password. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a new string, auth token equals, and then we're going to use the helpers object to base64 encode our encoded hash. All right. And so now if we output our string, oops, if we output our auth token, export, reload this, and send it again. So now we get this lovely base64 object. And if we send it again, we get the same thing. If we change this test equals, I don't know, all of that, we get a completely different object. Okay. So now we can say, okay, let's cut some header, and we'll append auth token. All right. And let's reload it. And send again. And if we go to logger, we get this X custom header. So the idea here being, if there is some kind of app, and it doesn't even have to be a web app, right? As long as it's sending HTTP requests. If it's using some kind of custom authentication method that is based on signing the request with a key, right? Like looking at the body, if it has a body and it signs the body and then puts a custom authentication header in, this is how you can code Burp to automatically do that. Now, remember, we've limited it to the repeater tool, but you know, if we took out this and allowed it to run against any tool in Burp, then you could do intruder attacks. You know, you could use the scanner. You could do pretty much anything. Does that make sense to everyone? Awesome. All right, so let's do something slightly, I guess, difficult. Let's, I'm just having to review some of the code I already wrote. What we'll do is we're going to implement an I tab. Add unimplemented methods. Okay. And obviously we need to register it. Register tab, I guess. No. Oh, actually, I don't think we need to. We don't need to register a tab. That's one of the things we don't need to do. Okay. But what we do need to do is create swing utilities, invoke later, a new runnable. That should, I believe, sorry, I'm just running down. I think now, oh, callbacks, add suite tab, that's the one. Extended of this. I think this is all we need to do. And if we add the tab caption, let's just put test. So what I did there was this should create a new tab in Burp called test. This weird code I put up here is where we're going to put all the code like it builds everything in the tab. Let's just double check it works though. So if we reload it, oh, errors, here we go. Component cannot be null. All right, that makes sense. I need to create a UI component. So give me 2 minutes. Let's go back to our code. Up here, we'll need to create a private jpanel panel, and let's do panel equals new jpanel. We'll probably actually need to load what type of panel. There we go, import that. Okay, that should be fine. And then if we get on here, I think that should load it. And then the only other thing we need to do is callbacks dot customize UI component panel. So, I mean, this is all kind of confusing. If you go back to one of the examples, where are they? So this uses an I tab here, and you can see this is basically the same thing, right? So you can basically just copy this and understand kind of what's going on. But let's compile that and see what happens. There we go. There it is up there. Okay. So we've created a new tab in Burp, which is just called test, and you know, right now it doesn't do anything, but we can start doing stuff. So one of the things that obviously we might want to do currently, right, we have this secret password, which is static, right? So it's coded statically. So what we might want to do is create a dialog maybe, or the ability to set a password, right? So what we can do is, where's just give me a second. So I think what we need to do, we need to add a new, so private string password. We'll initialize it to that, and then we can create a not a J label, but forget the name of the actual the actual thing we need to create. A text box. Yeah, is it just J text box? Or is it J text field? It might be J text field. You know what, let's just try it. J text field password field equals new J text field. Yeah, I think that does it. Okay. And now we need to actually add it to our This is where it gets complicated. Adding text fields is kind of complicated. But I think we should be able. So I'm going to use a group layout. Layout equals new group layout on the panel. Panel.set layout to layout. So this is kind of complicated, and it's going to get kind of complicated. Doing graphic design, like GUI design in Java, is kind of difficult. This is definitely not the easiest way to do it. However, it's the most powerful way. But effectively what group layout does is you describe the layout horizontally, and then you describe it vertically, and Java sort of magically puts it together. So you'll see what I mean. Oops. I'm gonna. Oops. Why is that not auto completing? Add component password field, and then I think that's everything. So for the vertical group. Add component password field. Okay. That's done. I mean, let's just try it. Let's just see what happens. I have not coded Java GUIs in a while. So we'll do that. Test. Yeah, it didn't do anything. All right. There is something I missed here. I'm just scrolling back through code that I wrote like years ago. Because there is definitely a way of doing this. I think I need to. There is a way to like force it, I think. Yeah, I might need to set the visibility. Maybe set visible. I'm just trying to find. Let's try that and see. There's no errors, right? Unless it's oh, I know what's it's there. It's the entire thing. All right, no, we can do this. This is fine. This is okay. It was always there. What I need to do is, hang on. It is just a little too big. All right, here we go. So password field dot set maximum size, new dimension, should be integer dot max value. And then the password field dot get preferred size dot height, and then password field set minimum size, new dimension 300, and then password field dot get preferred preferred size. Oh, that's not preferred size. Dot height again. I mean, let's just try that. I think that's the code. We'll see. Oh, there it is. Okay. So we made it like quite big, right? We can change that. We can set an integer here. So maybe we just always want it to be 300 width. So let's do that. And extender test. Yeah, there we go. All right. So now what we want to do, we're going to add a label. So up here we'll add a J label. Let's just do password field label equals new J label, and the J label is going to be password, right, with a colon. I need to import. Is J label wrong? Oh, I got J label equals. Okay, so I think the J label should be fine. That should default to a good size. All right, now we just need to add it. So, if we think about horizontally, right, we should just be able to add. Actually, add a new component. Password field label to there. Because you think about a horizontal group that's sequential means these two will be right next to each other, one after the other. Setting a vertical group is a little different. So we don't want them to be sequential, so instead we want them to be on the same line. So we're going to add, I'm going to create, so now add a group, and it's going to be layout.create parallel group, right? We're going to add that and add this before it. If I remember how this works, this should just work. Where am I? Extender. Perfect. Okay. So what I did there, if you don't understand, so like I said, the layout, group layout is really powerful because you define the layout twice. So we define it horizontally. So if you set a horizontal group, you need to have like a main group in here. And the main group should always be sequential. Sequential means one after the other, right? So if you're looking at this layout horizontally, what happens? Well, first there's going to be a password field label. And then to the right of it, there's going to be a password field. Okay. So that's that works. That's the easy one. Now, for setting a vertical group, if you think about looking at it vertically, well, if you go down, you're hitting both the password text field and this, both the label and the password field at the same time. So they need to be grouped together. And so that's what this parallel group is. They're parallel because when you're looking at it from a vertical point, these are parallel to each other. Okay. So you honestly play around with it. It makes so much more sense if you just mess around. But yeah, it's a super powerful layout. It's actually what, if you go into an IDE that has like a draggable layout thing, it's what that uses, I believe, mostly. And it's just really, really nice. So yeah. But let's add a button, because we want the button to be able to set that password, right? So we'll do a JButton, password button, equals new JButton. I think we can add like an update. Oops. All right, we need to import JButton. So let's put the button below everything. All right. And so what we're going to do is when we're looking from this left to right, so these two things are going to be parallel with the button. All right. So what we'll do is after this sequential group, we'll do an add group layout dot create parallel group, and we'll take that out. Within this parallel group, we're gonna have, like, firstly we're gonna have a new group which is sequential, and that is going to contain these two. All right. And then after that, we're going to have components. Oh, what have I done? No, I didn't do add component. Okay, add component. We're going to have the password button. Okay. And in this group, so vertically, we already have this sequential group, which has a parallel group here. So after this group is done, we can just add a component, password button, I think. Honestly, this is a lot of trial and error, but you end up with really beautiful looking layouts if you do it right. Perfect. There you go. It worked. Well, it'll always align it to the left. I'm not sure you can. Actually, no, you can align it. Hang on. So if we're doing it horizontally, we can add a group layout dot alignment dot trailing. I think that will do it. If it doesn't, there's other things we can do. But this might work. Yeah, there we go. But yeah, you can get some really nice layouts using this. It just takes a lot of code because effectively you're describing the layout twice. But yeah, it's really nice. I definitely recommend using this. Okay, so we have our button. And now what we want to do is add an action to our button. So password button, add action listener, new action listener. All right. So this will get triggered when a button's clicked. And so what I think we need to do actually is make this password field accessible to everything. So what we'll do up here is we'll do private password field. And then we can just take this and do this dot password field. Actually, I should probably rewrite all this, refactor. And so that will update everything. Oh, okay, hang on. Right, because we're in a runnable. That's annoying. There definitely should be a way. I wonder if just password field, will that work? Oh, right. Yeah, that might work. Okay, perfect. All right, that worked. I'm not sure if this works either. Okay, that doesn't work. All right, so that's fine. And so now we should just be able to set the password, the string password, equal to password field dot get text. I think. Can we access debug? We can. So let's print line the password as well. So let's set the password to default. And then we'll see what happens. Actually, I guess what we can do is here, we can replace this secret password with password. Export, finish, reload. Okay. So let's send. Let's just send a GET request, and we get that. And if we send it again, we'll get the same thing. So now, what happens if we just type password and click update? Did anything break? Well, okay, so output password. Now if we resend, we get a different thing. Yes, okay, it worked. All right. So that's like this really quick and dirty sort of GUI. Other things you could do, you could get it so that it stores this somewhere in a database. And loads it when you reload the extension. It'll persist it. Right? Pre-fill the password field. So you can do that easily, actually. So up here, when we define our password field here, we can do password field dot set value, I think, or I think so. Set text. That's the one. Set text to password. It already guessed it was password. That's nice. So now if we reload, and to compile, reload. and reload it. And go to test. There we go, it's default. So yeah. That, in a roundabout way, is how you can create Burp extensions. And kind of trial and error, we got the layout working. I have not coded a layout in Java in so long. But yeah. Are there any questions? See, we've got a few people in the chat. Iwang, thanks for auto recon. Yeah, no problem. Should line 28 be an error? Maybe it was at some point. It's fine now. Oh, I think that's when I missed JText field, right? Yep. So, I mean, really, that's all I had planned for this stream, was to get some basic functionality coded and do that. What you can see, if you go back to this page, you know, there's a bunch of custom code here, like examples. So. Like I said at the start, what I've found is that if you intercept requests a lot, you can do so much. But like, for instance, custom scanner checks are fun if you have access to the scanner, because you can create passive scan checks, you can create active scan checks. So you know, if you want to create your own scanner checks for things, you can do that. Intruder payloads. So in Intruder, there's an option, extension generated, and it'll one will come up here. You can create a generator for extension payloads. I've never done that. Where is it? But it looks like in this case, like, you know, they're just defining an array. So it's a really simple thing, but yeah, I definitely encourage people to play around with it, and create Burp extensions. It's a lot of fun. Hopefully the stream helped. But yeah, I know at the start of the stream I said maybe we'd look at Python, but I think the stream went on for quite a while, so I probably need to be getting some dinner. So if there's no other questions, maybe we'll do Jython or Python another day. All right. I'm taking there's no other questions from the chat. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. Some information on the screen on how to subscribe or follow me on various social media platforms. Tomorrow, I think we'll be doing Portswigger Web Academy again. Or at least that's the plan. And then Friday, I want to do some more Try Hack Me. So we'll try and round the week off with some of that. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, everyone.